It's Empathy Day, or International Empathy Week, or whatever. And the far left love to push empathy because it's such a soft, harm avoidance, fluffy term that can be used to further their agenda. And it's the basis of pretty much every nefarious principle and outcome of today, like hate speech laws, hate crime laws, mass immigration, even like it's informing marriage habits through weaponized empathy or sympathy, which would be a better term. And yeah, that's why it's being shoved down our throats. It's very feminizing, because the whole attitude subjugates truth. If you're being empathetic, then you're going to be lying a lot to make people, to appeal to their egos or their narcissistic desires inside themselves. Because that's all it is. You can't tell people the truth because it bursts their ego, it bursts their bubble. So that's all it is. It's just a sleight of hand. Not only that, people today, like, it's used as a business, trick ploy, isn't it? Like every YouTube video going today, what do they say? They empathize with the viewer. Like they share an experience that they've had, or maybe it's a lie, who knows, that resonates with, maybe they've done research online to see how many people have this problem. And then they say, look, I know you're going through all of this pain. I've been through with all this pain as well. Oh no, I've been through it a week and blah, blah, blah. And then what do? They flip. And then they start selling you crap. And then they start asking you to subscribe. And then they start asking you to send them money. So half the time it's a sales ploy. And it's a sales ploy in people as well. Because it's now a social custom. Like people are like, oh, I'm empathetic, and they passive aggressively insult people by treating them as if they're victims, by treating them as if they're helpless nobodies, and by offering them help and underestimating their abilities and trying to help them do things they can perfectly do fine themselves, while even doing 3 or 4 other things at once. That is completely toxic and disgusting, and it must weaken people to the very core. That is not empathy at all. It's nothing to do with the actual definitions of empathy. The definitions of empathy are, number 1, that you can read other people's minds intellectually, and number 2, that you can feel other people's feelings. And I know History Debunked has just done a video on it, and he said it's impossible to do that because we can't have telepathy, you know what I mean? So what actually happens is you think you know what the other person's thinking or feeling because you've actually had that experience before, or you can externalize their signals, internalize their external signals, and you probabilistically think that they're thinking that, but half the time you're probably wrong. And then even then, when that happens, if someone's more extroverted, they enforce their views on the other person, because the other person who's passive and introverted might not even care or know or what they're feeling. They have no ideas themselves, so they just take whatever explanation you give them. So then not only is it not empathy, it's just about bullying, or, not bullying, but overpowering the other individual. It's nothing to do with empathy. It's just absolute nonsense. Nobody knows what it is. Maybe they know what it is, but they can't really can't really discover it. They don't really understand it, So if it doesn't exist, autism doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, pathologies don't, like narcissism and psychopathy, don't exist because they're couched in empathy. And then even that, I can think of countless examples of people who say they're empathetic, but they're the exact opposite. And then that book was written about empathy as well, wasn't it? Like, it just shows, like, empathy is it's like totalitarian, and it doesn't care about groups, it cares about single, soppy, individual cases, so it hierarchicalizes pain. If 2 people are victimized, one victim who's more of a victim will get the help and the sympathy, and the other victim now becomes less of a victim, which is absolute nonsense. You know what I mean? So that's a big problem, especially in Western countries where women who have, you know, who are completely religious by nature have bought into this whole far left empathy parade, and their empathy, which is actually sympathy, is just generalized caring. Like, it's not even caring. They don't actually care. It's just an expression. It's performative. Their sympathy, their ritual is devoted to the most, impoverished people on the planet. But they're impoverished because they have low IQ. And that's it. They're impoverished because, that's the way they are. And you can't help them. So their empathy or sympathy is being directed at them, and they're being brought into our countries through this weaponized sympathy. So not only are they not empathetic, they're having it used as sympathy by people who's created a religion from it against them, against themselves, and against their kin, and against everyone around them. So it's a bomb. It's poison. It's like, you ever see that insect infested by a parasite that loses control of itself and its eyes start going like that? That's what sympathy is. Like, you know what I mean? If I go through my teaching examples, like, you ever argue with girls about philosophy, and they're like, they always go back to like sympathy and soppy sounding language, and then they're like, oh, the poor Muslims in all the countries. And then I turn around and say to them, those girls think you're disgusting. They don't like you. They don't like liberalism. They're Muslims. They want to convert you to Islam. You don't understand that they were born into the religion, and they believe in the religion, and they view you from the perspective of their religion in a horrible way, and you just, can't compute that because you just have been brought up in a different religion, like, and you're, to them, prostitutes. That's what you are to them. That's what I said to them. And their brain just goes, I don't know. And then, they sort of snap at you, and they just can't have an answer to it. They don't have an answer to it. And then they come back 2 weeks later into the class, and the same argument, because girls argue the same thing all the time. Like, they don't change their opinion through logic. They change their opinion through authority. So they come back, and the same argument will come up because they don't change their opinions, and then they'll say, oh, the Muslims will do it out of, some sort of programming, and then you'll bring it up again, and they'll agree with it this time. And they'll be like, right. So they're not actually able to understand themselves from another person's perspective, while at the same time saying that they're empathetic. They're empathetic, and they love empathy, and they love social intelligence and all that nonsense, and they love emotional intelligence. They don't even know what it means. They're saying that. They're saying that as if, you're a Catholic and you don't know who Mother Mary is. It's just a label, a social label that they see brings some social status. And they just direct sympathy at whatever group the globalists tell them to direct it at. That's all it is. And they're not actually empathetic by the definition of the term. They're not. They don't have a clue what it is. They don't know how to think outside themselves. They just think emotionally and erratically. So, yeah, even men as well. But it doesn't really matter. Empathy, who cares? You don't need empathy to be moral. Like, you can train AI to be moral. You know what I mean? You don't need to feel any feelings. You can have truth statements and principles. And actually, truth statements are much superior to empathy. Empathy is just an erratic emotion that can be directed towards anything. It's useless. I'd say the only thing good about empathy, the empathy it's not. It doesn't really exist if history debunker is right, which I think he is. But in how we understand it, sort of does exist, because some people are better at coming up with probabilistic scenarios where they could be correct and adjust in their behavior and tactics towards those, like a game of chess. So it's basically a method, like a behavior of lying and manipulation. That's what it is, because it promotes like thinking about how others are feeling and how to adjust yourself to their feelings, rather than just focusing on the truth and saying the truth all the time. You know what I mean? So it's like politicians are good at it, and the best politicians are men. They're the best liars. They're the best fake actors who go through life performing nonsense and saying what they think should be said so they can gain social status and power. So if women are the empathetic sex, why are they terrible politicians and why are men the best politicians? Doesn't make any sense. Empathy is absolute nonsense. Should be destroyed. Get rid of it. It's absolutely horrible, and get rid of this International Empathy Day along with the rest of the far left globalist ideologies.